We got it working, family. We're just going to allow everybody a few minutes to return, then we're going to get right into it. Inshallah. I don't know why I'm trying to turn it around. And there we go. No, no, I don't want that. I'm just going to do it that way. All right. In the most holy name of Allah, who came in a person of Master Fard Muhammad, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is his living and exalted Christ, and that the honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan is their divine reminder, the Messiah in our midst. Welcome back. Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak. My apologies. We're up and running now. I appreciate you. Thank you all for coming back. Let me jump right back into it. Why did I write this book with the landscape full of books on UFOs? All of the books on UFOs that support the reality of UFOs, almost all of them have an extraterrestrial alien interpretation of the UFO phenomenon. One of the points of our discussion this evening is to argue that the extraterrestrial phenomenon or the extraterrestrial hypothesis of the UFO phenomenon is wrong. UFOs, so-called UFOs, are real enough. But the extraterrestrial hypothesis of the UFO phenomenon, it is wrong. But all of the books in support of the reality of so-called UFOs, they couch their discussion in the UFO or extraterrestrial hypothesis. We bear witness that the UFO reality is real or the UFO reality is true. What is absent from all of these discussions, all of these books, is a discussion of who's really flying the UFOs. The black pilots, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, teaches us that these craft are not flown by aliens, little green men, little gray men, or women from other planets. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad said the UFOs, so-called UFOs, are part of a fleet of craft that did not originate off planet, did not originate from another solar system. They were built here on Earth. And the pilots of these craft are black human beings. Black gods, they are human beings who are much superior than the average human being today, but they are human beings nonetheless. The technology they possess, the science that they are capable of is so advanced, they may seem otherworldly when we encounter them, but this technology is not alien. This technology is divine. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that it is black people flying these craft. But when we consult all of the UFO books, when we consult the books that specifically discuss the occupants of these craft or the pilots of these craft, as I mentioned, they have whole encyclopedias printed, encyclopedias of aliens, encyclopedias of pilots that give verbal and visual descriptions, pictorial descriptions of the whole spectrum of beings that are allegedly behind the UFO phenomena. And with all of the entries in these alien or pilot encyclopedias, you never encounter the Asiatic black people who the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said are actually flying these craft. Yet, what I demonstrate is that the evidence is overwhelming that the most authentic and believable close encounters of the third kind were not with Greys or reptilians or Nordics. That the most believable and credible reported close encounters of the third kind are with Asiatic black men. So this book, one of the pillars of this book is demonstrating that the pilots of these chariots, aerial chariots, are indeed gods, but they are specifically black gods. The second point of this writing, which is the other unique contribution. So I believe this work makes a unique contribution to ufology or the study of UFOs because this is the only book that I'm aware of where you encounter the evidence that the pilots of these craft are not just human, they are black humans, verifying the revelation of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The second contribution that this book makes, inshallah, is exposing the alien hoax. So not only do I document in here that the true pilots of these craft, so-called UFOs, are black men, are also document in this writing that the whole alien narrative is not just wrong, it's a hoax. It's government disinformation. And while there are a number of books that shine light on the disinformation aspects of the alien narrative, Mirage Men is a great book. This, I believe, is the first book that puts the evidence together so comprehensively, detailing how the alien hoax developed, what inspired the U.S. government to promote the UFOs as alien extraterrestrial craft. I believe this is the first ufology book that details the disinformation campaign of the U.S. government. The real cover up is covering up the black pilots of these craft. The real conspiracy, the real disinformation coming from the government is that these craft originated off planet and are piloted by by aliens. Now, we're going to try this one more again. So you all tell me if you can see. Okay. Got it. This is what you prefer, not most of you. I'm sorry, I have to take that back. You wouldn't be engaged in this conversation with me tonight if this applied to you. But most of ufology, most believers in UFOs, this is what they prefer. They prefer their aliens. They prefer the pilots of these craft to be a small gray or Nordic white or a green reptilian. But all of this is myth. The reality is that the pilots look more like this. The pilots are neither Nordics from Zeta Reticuli or any other place. They are not grays from Pleiades. They are not reptilians. They are Asiatic black men. They look more like this, or they look more. You prefer this. You prefer your UFO pilot to look like Prometheus of Hollywood fame, but in reality, the true UFO pilot looks more like this. Meaning more like this. The alien narrative that dominates the UFO conversation. The talk about grays and EBEs and Nordics and reptilians. That is not disclosure. That is government disinformation. And we document in detail that the entire alien myth has been guided, developed, shaped by U.S. intelligence agencies. Now, on that note, last week, Friday, the Pentagon in particular, its UFO or UAP studying body, ARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which was established recently, which most of us learned about during the congressional hearings on UAPs held not too long ago. ARO just released their most recent report. The report on the historical record of UFO government involvement with unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, the Pentagon had promised this report. This is part one of the report. Part two is forthcoming. The public was promised this report from ARO that was investigating openly and allegedly transparently investigating reports, UAP reports, with an open mind and fairly, and releasing their findings. This is their first offering, their first release. Now, this report has got almost the entire UFO community up in arms. They are mad, mad, mad. They are loudly crying lies and cover up, arguing that this report is another whitewash. That ARO published this report to deceive yet again the American public. The cries of the UFO community is that this report, dated February 2024, that this report is disinformation. Now, the UFO community will likely get very angry with me right now because I have read the 63-page report closely, and I was not able to find a lie in it, a white lie or two, maybe. But that which has triggered the UFO community, the claims made in this document that has so angered the UFO community, triggering charges of lie and cover up, those claims actually I find to be very true. So, in other words, my reading of the ARO report compels me to say the report, for the most part, tells the truth. Now I have to qualify that announcement. While I found this report truthful, I also find this report very deceptive. It's a mischief-making report for sure. In this report, the Pentagon speaks truth, but speaks it in a very deceitful manner. This report skillfully uses truth to deceive and continue to confuse the public. It does so. But it never actually lies. It just deceptively presents truth. The way it presents truth and the way it withholds truth makes the report, while not full of lies, it makes it deceptive. Aro said in the report that they found no evidence of the government being in possession of extraterrestrial technology. The report's conclusions are that the majority of UFO sightings that they studied, that they represent misidentified ordinary phenomena or secret U.S. technology that was mistakenly perceived as UFO. Now, that's very true. The majority of UFO sightings are mistaken identity sightings. Most reports aren't witnesses of actual UFOs. The overwhelming majority of reports from the beginning of this phenomenon can be adequately accounted for in a very mundane manner. But it is also true, has always been true, and it is true now, and it is acknowledged as such by the RO report, that there is a small portion of UFO incidents that are genuinely anomalous and potentially threatening to U.S. national security. So it is indeed a fact that while most of the reports can be explained in very mundane terms, RO has before them a small, comparatively speaking, a much smaller body of reports that absolutely cannot be accounted for by any known explanation. That is a true statement, and it's a statement made in the report. Now, the UFO community is up in arms because RO said they investigated the claims and even the whistleblower claims that the government is in possession of retrieved extraterrestrial craft, that extraterrestrial craft have crash landed on Earth, and that the U.S. government has taken possession of these extraterrestrial craft and extraterrestrial non-human beings. The ARO report says it investigated that and found no evidence of that. And the UFO community is raging with anger because of that. But the way RO wrote their language is very skillful, such that they cannot be charged with lying, but in what they say and don't say, they reveal a truth. Aro makes a particular point. Aro does not deny, this report does not deny that the U.S. government is in possession of UFO technology. This report does not deny that. This report does not deny that the U.S. government is in possession of crash material from UFOs. It does not deny that. Nor does this report deny that the government is in possession of biological material related to UFOs. Very interestingly, this report refuses to deny any of that. This report denies something very specific. This report denies that the government is in possession of extraterrestrial crash material. This report denies that the government is in possession of extraterrestrial or off-world biological material. See, that's the point. This report is deceptive because it uses extraterrestrial as a red herring. It goes out of its way to show that the government does not have extraterrestrial material, either craft material or biological material. And this report is correct because the craft material and the biological material that the government is in possession of, in which this Aro report does not deny, that material is not extraterrestrial. That's the point. The extraterrestrial narrative, UFO, my UFO community, you are insisting on a UFO narrative to understand the UFO phenomena. This report is not denying the UFO phenomena. It's denying the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The irony is it's the same people who's responsible for the UFO phenomenon. See, this is the game and this is the mischief that is made. The Pentagon knows that it is responsible for evolving the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And this report, while it will not deny that the government has crashed UFOs and biological material from those crashed UFOs, the government is denying that this material is extraterrestrial. And the government is absolutely correct. Now, because the UFO phenomenon is real, but the extraterrestrial hypothesis is bogus. Now, something very interesting as we move on. In this report, it says that the aim of this report was an examination, or the aim of the investigation behind this report, it says, was to examine the history of American involvement in UFO research and investigation. American government research and investigation. It says something very curious. RO made the decision to begin their investigation with a particular date, 1945. And that date is so arbitrary. In other words, they started looking at materials beginning in 1945 on. And that's very curious because that date, 1945, is very arbitrary in terms of ufology. It didn't start its investigation with 1947, where most believe, but wrongly believe, that the American UFO phenomenon began in 1947 with the Kenneth Arnold sighting, and then with Roswell, the Roswell incident. It was after Roswell that the majority of the government investigation into the phenomenon began. So I could understand if they began their investigation in 1947, but they didn't. They began in 1945, which is arbitrary. They should have begun in 1942. The UFO phenomenon, it cannot say that it began in 1942 in America, but ufology's grandfather moment is not Roswell 1947. It is Los Angeles 1942. And we detail the truth about the so-called battle in Los Angeles, and we unpack it in a way that I do not believe you're going to encounter a similar discussion of that event in any other UFO work. The true grandfather event of ufology is 1942, the so-called Battle of Los Angeles, if we understand that event properly. And the government, absolutely, the administration, the government of President Roosevelt, the military, they conducted an investigation. So RO could have and probably should have began its investigation in 1942 if it wasn't going to begin it in 1947, but it did not do that. It picked an arbitrary date of 1945, which does not have a major event, not even one that they point to in that year. So I asked myself, why did the Pentagon begin its investigation with this arbitrary date of 1945? Why did it not even mention 1942? And I believe I know the answer. Because two things happened in 1942 in terms of ufology. One, the U.S. government came face to face with the might of these craft, the mothership, and its fleet, or a portion of this fleet of baby planes. The government came face to face with these craft in February 1942. President Roosevelt and his military searched for the base of these craft and couldn't find it. The military published or wrote classified documents confirming that the event took place. The other thing that happened in 1942 was the U.S. government came face to face with the truth of the UFO phenomenon that they encountered in February. The government came face to face with the truth of these craft in May 1942, when President Roosevelt had the Honorable Elijah Muhammad locked up. His FBI, Roosevelt's FBI, picked the Honorable Elijah Muhammad up and interrogated him about his teaching on the wheel, the mother plane, and the baby planes. And as we document what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad revealed to the FBI, the FBI was enthralled by it. They believed it and were preoccupied. The FBI became preoccupied with what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching about the wheel and the baby planes, which are the reality behind the so-called UFO phenomenon. So the RO report could not go back to 1942 because because the Pentagon didn't want to open up the can of worms that would be opened by having to hint at what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad shared to the FBI and thus the government about the truth of these craft or this phenomenon. So RO picked this arbitrary date of 1945 to begin its investigation. But the point is, dear family, that to my ufological family, my UFO researching family, you're very angry at this report, but that which this report says that has you most upset is actually true. The UFO phenomenon is real, but it has never been an extraterrestrial phenomenon. It has always been a terrestrial phenomenon, but of a particular terrestrial nature. We will get to that shortly, inshallah, or let's get to that now. If it's not extraterrestrial, Brother Wesley, then what is it? Well, you can use the language crypto-terrestrial. This is not the language of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's the language of ufology. But if you will indulge me, because I want to speak to ufology, I want to speak to the community of UFO researchers. So I will use the language of ufology because I'm speaking to ufology. Extraterrestrial is not the appropriate categorization or characterization of this phenomenon. Physicist Hal Puthoff, he introduced the language ultra-terrestrial, also called crypto-terrestrial. What does that mean? Crypto, of course, means hidden, secret. For example, cryptography is the technique of communication where the real information is hidden in codes that the average hearer or reader is incapable of accessing. Cryptography, sending secret communications through unencrypted words. The so-called crypto-terrestrial or ultra-terrestrial hypothesis is closer to the truth that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad revealed, closer than the so-called extraterrestrial hypothesis. The crypto-terrestrial or ultra-terrestrial hypothesis is this. It attributes the UFO phenomenon to an ancient group of earthly people, an ancient group of people who's still on our planet, but they exist apart from us. They exist alongside regular earthlings, but they exist in distinct stealth. This group, the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, says it's a human group, but it's an occult group. Occult means possessing supernatural powers. So this so-called crypto-terrestrial or ultra-terrestrial hypothesis of ufology says that this ancient group of human beings that possess supernatural powers, they possess advanced scientific knowledge and high technology. They are responsible for so-called UFOs. This crypto-terrestrial hypothesis says this group, again, we may encounter them, but we wouldn't know it. They exist in stealth. Some iterations of the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis says this group of advanced humans that exist on Earth, but in stealth, that they exist in subterranean communities. Communities not off planet, but in some ways inside the planet. Hidden communities inside the Earth. This is what the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis of ufology says, and what I'm saying is that this ufology hypothesis comes much closer to the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter has been given by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and it is with these observations of ufology called crypto-terrestrial hypothesis that better accounts for what's really going on in our skies now. The extraterrestrial hypothesis, we know that it's not only is it a demonstrable hoax, demonstrable because we demonstrated it. And we are going to unpack inshallah, unpack that process in a minute. But I want to make this point. Not only is the extraterrestrial hypothesis a hoax, it is on observational and logical and mathematical grounds, it is wrong. We know that it is not aliens flying these craft. We know that. There are several lines of evidence that makes it very clear that no extraterrestrials could be flying these craft. One, we know that, for example, the density of UFO sightings over decades indicates that a present time local context has to account for this phenomenon. In other words, over decades, there have been so many UFO sightings. UFOs have been seen in our skies over decades so much. It has to be the case that they originate here. They've been in these skies so frequently for so long, they have to have originated here. The UFO phenomenon is too ubiquitous to suggest that the theory of occasional or occasionally visiting extraterrestrials, explorers account for it. In other words, you cannot mathematically, you cannot say that the UFO phenomenon is the result of aliens visiting the planet and exploring the planet. They've been seen, these craft have been seen in our atmosphere, in our skies for way too long, been seen way too much to suggest that these are visiting extraterrestrial explorers. The math ain't mathing. So many. These craft have been flying in our skies and swimming in our seas so much and for so long. We know that their native context is this earth. That brings me to point number 2. Now, before I get to that, Mac Tommy's is mentioned. And yes, Mac Tommy's advanced the language crypto terrestrial. But I want to make this point. We don't subscribe. We don't bear witness to Mac Tommy's crypto terrestrials. See, Mac Tommy's argued that the crypto terrestrials that he wrote about, this group hidden on Earth that's responsible for UFOs. He says they are a humanoid species indigenous to Earth. No, the true crypto-terrestrials are not humanoid. They are human, full stop. They are divine humans. They are divine black humans. They are not humanoids. So, Matami's crypto-terrestrials are not the true crypto-terrestrials. The other point that just by common sense lets you and me know that the extraterrestrial hypothesis is bogus, in the most credible and believable accounts of close encounters of the third kind, if you will, accounts of people encountering UFOs and the pilots. Invariably, when they describe the pilots, when they describe the aliens, they describe the aliens having on a shiny suit. But what they hardly ever do is describe the alien that they encounter in their backyard or on some back road. They never have a breathing apparatus on. So these aliens that they encounter in all shapes and sizes, they come from different planets, yet they are breathing our own air because they have no breathing apparatus on. That lets you know that that report is bogus. That lets you know how fraudulent the extraterrestrial hypothesis or alien theory is. Because if it's aliens flying these ships and in our atmosphere and landing and encountering humans, when they step out of that ship, they better have on a breathing apparatus because they cannot breathe our air, as we cannot go to their planet and breathe their air. Now, recently in Detroit during Savior's Day, I had the honor to sit down with our brother 19 Keys for an interview. It was I believe, a great conversation I had with my brother 19 Keys. I assume that conversation will be posted at some point. During the conversation, when I made that point that I just made, brother 19 Keys said he would play God's advocate. He said he pushed back on that argument. He suggested that, well, that my argument that the aliens, when they step out of the craft, should have had on a breathing apparatus. He, 19 Keys, suggested that, well, they can breathe in our atmosphere because they terraformed Earth. Now, for those of you who don't know what terraforming is what the U.S. government hopes to do to Mars. Terraforming is the process of deliberately modifying the atmosphere, the volatile components, the temperature, the surface topography, or the ecology of another planet, modify it to be similar to the environment of Earth in order to make that planet inhabitable for Earth life. So we want to terraform Mars, modify its environment, because Earthlings can't exist on Mars. We can't breathe the air of Mars. We cannot exist in the atmosphere of Mars. So the government wants to terraform Mars, modify its atmosphere in such a way that we would be able to breathe on Mars. In other words, strip Mars of its native atmosphere and replace that with an Earth atmosphere so that Earthlings can live there. So what our brother 19 Keys was suggesting is that if aliens could be flying these ships, and if we see them get out their craft on Earth and they don't have a breathing apparatus on, it could be because they can breathe Earth's atmosphere now because they terraformed Earth. And what I said to my brother is that we know that that is not true. We know that that is impossible because we are still breathing this air. If they can breathe Earth's air now because they terraformed the planet, then we could not, we Earthlings could not breathe this air. The two systems cannot breathe the same air. So we and them cannot be in this atmosphere, cohabiting and breathing the same air. So we know no aliens have terraformed Earth yet. And so all of these so-called aliens that are spoken about that land on Earth and get out their craft and don't have a breathing apparatus on, we know it's bogus. We know it's bogus. Let me move on. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm saying one thing, don't extrapolate and have me saying the next thing. I demonstrate, among other things, two things in this book. One, that the extraterrestrial hypothesis of the UFO phenomenon is bogus. It is not real. It is not true. However, that does not mean, and we are absolutely not saying that extraterrestrial life isn't real. Extraterrestrial life is real. Hear me good. Extraterrestrial life is real. Even though the extraterrestrial hypothesis of the UFO phenomenon is bogus. The two must be kept separate. Now you say, all right, Brother Wesley, you're confusing me. If you are saying that aliens exist, that extraterrestrials do exist, why are you going so hard trying to prove that extraterrestrials or aliens are not flying UFOs. Well, I understand your exasperation, and we will unpack that, inshallah. See, God is in the details, and truth resides in nuance. We have to be capable of thinking nuance, engaging, recognizing, and engaging nuance. So, yes, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was taught by God, who also happens to be the architect of the mothership that is so captivating the world, the mothership that the Pentagon acknowledged in its report or preliminary draft report when it said that it theorized that a mothership was flying around space, sending out UFOs as probes. That's real. The architect of that mothership that is sending out these UFO probes is Master Fard Muhammad, the teacher of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. The honorable Elijah Muhammad told us, and we accept, that all 9 planets have life on them. Hear us, or hear me. All 9 planets have life on them, family. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad says 7 planets are inhabited. Don't ask me to explain the difference between 9 planets with life on them versus 7 planets that are inhabited. I have a theory, but I don't have the answer. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did distinguish 9 planets have life on them and 7 planets are inhabited. 7 of our planets of our solar system are inhabited. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad specifies Mars and Venus. Mars and Venus as being live planets that contain life that is similar to ourselves. So, according to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, on Mars and on Venus, there is life, and that life is similar to us, black people, on planet Earth. He had a lot to say about the people and the civilization on Mars. And I'm going to read to you what he said because it's so profound, it's very important. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the people on Mars are people that's not exactly like you and me. They are black people, but they're not exactly like you and me. He said they walk on 2 feet like you and me. He said they are taller than we are, and they are skinnier than we are. His teacher, Master Fard Muhammad, knew the language that the people on Mars spoke. And he, Master Fard Muhammad, can communicate with the people and question the people. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that it was our fathers, the black man, the black gods of earth, that made Mars, the planet Mars, with that people. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that while there is life in all or on all 9 planets, and 7 planets are inhabited, and Venus and Mars are inhabited with a civilization similar or people similar to us on Earth, yet all of them are inferior to civilization on Earth, black civilization on Earth. He said that we can make the people on Mars react to our will, do what we say, but the people on Mars cannot make us react to their will. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says this, and this is very important. He says, listen to the words of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He says, quote, "We have life on other planets, but the white man doesn't. Allah will not let Yaqub scatter the devil over the planets. He couldn't live out there on Mars if you put him on Mars, because the gravitation and the atmosphere that upholds Mars will kill one of us Earth people if we try to live on it. We Earth people cannot live on Mars. The atmosphere will kill us." Listen to what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says. He says, "Even if we took a drink of water, it would kill us. If we ate a piece of its vegetation, it would kill us. You can't live on any other you can't live on any other planet but the one that you are born on or born out of. This one." He says, "God didn't make his universe so that life could be transferred from one planet to the other and survive in the atmosphere of that planet." Listen to the messenger of God. God did not make his universe. God, the black God, put the light, the black God from Earth. Earth was the first planet created in life. While it began in space, it developed on Earth. But of course, Earth was not then as it is today. But God developed on Earth. And then he put planets, the black God, the black man who is God. He established 8 other planets in the solar system. And he, the black God from Earth, put life on all 9 of those planets, and 7 are inhabited. Yet, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, God didn't make his universe so that life can be transferred from one planet to the other and survive in the atmosphere of that planet. God designed it such that there is no cross-pollinating that can go on. No life indigenous to a planet can survive in the atmosphere of any other planet. So the thought that these extraterrestrials, while they are real, there is extraterrestrial life out there, and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the first to teach the world the truth of the civilization on Mars before the Viking orbiter sent back the images of the black face on Mars. It was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the 60s or before that was revealing the truth of the black people and civilization on Mars. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the people on Mars were black people. They were like us here on Earth, except he said they were taller and skinnier. In 1983, the CIA and the U.S. Army got the proof that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is absolutely correct. This image you see was produced by a CIA operative depicting what the CIA and the U.S. Army discovered regarding the people on Mars and what they look like. I'm not going to go into it. I detail it in my book. I did not draw this image. This is the CIA operative or asset or employee who, for the CIA and the U.S. Army, produced this depiction of what they found out about the people on Mars. And it absolutely vindicates what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had been saying in the 60s and 70s. The government was first able to vindicate Muhammad with the 1976 Viking orbiter images, and then in NASA was, and then in 1983, the CIA and the U.S. Army got further proof of the correctness of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. The little man here is a depiction of an earthling. The tall man is a depiction of what the government knows regarding the people on Mars and what they look like. They are black, they are taller and skinnier, exactly as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. So, I'm going. The extraterrestrial hypothesis. It's disinformation. It's not disclosure. It's disinformation, government disinformation. Now, all of that is in my book, Chariots of the Black Gods, the UFO Reality and the Alien Hoax. You can get it at drwesley.info. drwesley.info. Now, I want to go to this one. And then we will close out. And this is just a summary touching on points of these two books. Now, the Anunnaki and the sacred science of the Black God. Before I, well, no, I'm gonna stay here. I've read some very interesting remarks and heard some interesting remarks regarding my taking up this subject, the Anunnaki. I want to address some of that before we go into the details of the book, if I may. For those who believe that your brother is new to this subject, I published this book, The Book of God, an encyclopedia of proof that the Black man is God. I published it in 1998. You do the math. 1998. In this book, this encyclopedia of proof that the Black man is God, I document and discuss the Anunnaki in here. And I cite Zechariah Sitchin in 1998. I appreciated Zechariah Sitchin, but what I quote from Zechariah Sitchin is what I was able to verify in other sources. So I was writing about the Anunnaki in 1998. I published this book, Black Arabia and the African Origin of Islam. I published this book in 2009. And in this book, I go even deeper into the Anunnaki. See, I'm a trained historian of religion. This is what I do. Now, I've been writing on this subject for decades, literally decades. I have been writing on the Anunnaki. So, please stop with the Brother Wesley is jumping on a new bandwagon. No, I'm not the Johnny come lately to the subject of the Anunnaki. I have been doing Anunnaki scholarship for 30 years now. You say, well, are you a sumologist? Okay. My wife calling me to break a fast, and I am hungry. I want to say what I came to say regarding the Anunnaki. I'll be up shortly, love. I want to say finish up on the Anunnaki, then we can go home and go eat. Well, I am home. I'm gonna go eat, inshallah. Some say, what's your credential, Brother Wesley, to write about the Anunnaki? Now, that's very interesting that would be said, because the Anunnaki, the popular Anunnaki narrative, is dominated by Zecharia Sitchin's interpretation of the Anunnaki. Not the scholarly narrative, but the popular narrative. The popular conversation surrounding the Anunnaki is dominated by Zecharia Sitchin. The whole popular conversation on the Anunnaki defers to Zecharia Sitchin, but Zecharia Sitchin was no Sumerologist, no Assyriologist. Zecharia Sitchin got his degree from the University of London in economics. He was a journalist in Israel. Then he moved to New York, and with his economics degree, he helped run a shipping company. His professional training took him nowhere near Sumerology. Graham Hancock confesses to being neither a scientist or an archaeologist. He too was a journalist, yet he is the leading figure in alternative archaeology. So neither of them are required to have any training in the relevant fields, yet they are deferred to on these subjects. On my degree behind me, which I'm not going to grab down, but on that doctorate degree from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, the degree is in Near Eastern Studies. I got the doctorate from the Department of Near Eastern Studies. My specific area was Islamic studies, but I was trained in the Department of Near Eastern Studies, and in that department is ancient Mesopotamian studies, ancient biblical studies, and my dissertation involved ancient biblical texts as well as ancient Islamic texts. So I'm closer in training to the subject than Zecharia Sitchin and others who are writing about it. And I'm only making a point that if they are not disqualified from writing on the subject, why seek to disqualify your brother? First, let's clear this up. Dear family, please stop regurgitating the Zecharia Sitchin era of fiction. The term Anunnaki does not mean those who from heaven to earth came. Please, family, stop saying that. It never meant that, and Zecharia Sitchin never demonstrated that. He just said it. And here is the Sumerian writing of the term. He never showed the grammar behind his reading of this term, how he parsed it to get those who from heaven to earth came. He never showed a grammar. He never explained. And it's because the grammar don't work. You cannot get those who from heaven to earth came. You cannot get that from the Sumerian writing. Family, don't take my word for it. There are 4 foundational studies on the term Anunnaki. 4 of them. They don't agree, they're independent. You can avail yourself to them and study the issue, and you will see that Zecharia Sitchin had absolutely no warrant to interpret the term Anunnaki as those who from heaven to earth came. See, he imposed that reading on the Sumerian because he was trying to support his extraterrestrial hypothesis, his wrong Nibiru hypothesis. But in terms of the 4 studies, in terms of understanding the term Anunnaki, avail yourself to Van Soden, Babylonian groups of gods, Igigu and Anunnaku. Avail yourself to Falkenstein's The Anuna in the Sumerian tradition. I put them on the record so you can go get them. Avail yourself to Kynast, Igigu, and Anunnaku according to the Akkadian sources, and avail yourself to Van Soden's The Igigu Gods in the Old Babylonian Period. All of these studies analyze the etymology and the understanding of the term Anunnaki, and it derives from God An. It means offspring of An, or princely offspring. The progeny of the god An. An is the god. But you will see in those studies that there is no hint, no possibility of deriving from this Sumerian term the definition, the meaning, those who from heaven to earth came. But Zecharia Sitchin wanted to ground his Nibiru thesis, his narrative that the Anunnaki gods, the black gods of ancient Sumeria, ancient Mesopotamia. Yeah, I said black. And I'm going to go get at that black. Zecharia Sitchin wanted us to believe that the Anunnaki gods weren't black gods from Arabia, which they were, but that they were some other kind of gods from the planet, an exoplanet, Nibiru. Exoplanet meaning a planet outside of a solar system. I heard it said in defense of Zecharia Sitchin, I heard it said recently that the Enuma Elish, supposedly the Babylonian creation story, but the text that Zechariah's Sitchin, the ancient Mesopotamian text that Zechariah Sitchin claims to be relying on, I heard it said recently that the Enuma Elish says Agigi, a group of Anunnaki gods, that the Enuma Elish says Agigi were working on Mars, building a breakaway civilization. It is claimed that this is what the Enuma Elish says. See, this is a point. With due respect, and it is Ramadan, so I must keep it Ramadan. But this conversation suffers from a lack of rigor, lack of precision in our scholarship, and we are too free to just make stuff up. The claim that the Enuma Elish says that these Anunnaki gods were working on Mars, building a breakaway civilization. Look, family, I have several editions of the Enuma Elish, the so-called Babylonian creation story. I have Alexander Heidel's edition and translation. And here's the Babylonian Genesis, the story of creation. I have that published in James Pritchard's The Ancient Near East, an anthology of texts and pictures. There is the Enuma Elish here, this edition. And I have, and I must prefer, Lambert's very robust edition, Babylonian Creation Myths. Now, I have these editions, and I can say, as a matter of fact, nowhere in the Enuma Elish does it say the Anunnaki were working on Mars, building a breakaway civilization. We say stuff because we assume that most of the people listening don't have the materials. And we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that. The Anunnaki, if you want to understand the Anunnaki, familiarize yourself and get deep into the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the supreme wisdom, the root teaching. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings are a root teaching, and his root teaching illuminates all the branches of knowledge. It is the root teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Hear me, family. It is the root teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that is the key to interpreting the Enuma Elish of the ancient Babylonians. It is the root teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that is the key to interpreting the Atra Hashis, the story of the ancient Mesopotamians describing the creation of man. Zechariah Sitchin got it wrong. His interpretation of that text is wrong. To fully understand that text, the Atra Hassis. Study Message to the Black Man by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and you will understand how it is the story behind, the meaning behind the story of the Lulu that was created by the gods. What gods and who is Lulu? I named this book The Anunnaki and the Sacred Science of the Black God. I heard it said that Anunnaki doesn't mean a particular race. That people who say the Anunnaki are black or the Anunnaki are white, that they are wrong. Well, saying Anunnaki are white is wrong. Because the truth of the matter is that the Anunnaki were emphatically black gods. They were Dinger G, black god. Okay, just have to. Both. Let me go back. This is the god Anu, the king of the gods, on the left. He was in Sumerian, the Sumerian term Dinger Gi, black god. On the right, his firstborn son, Enki. He was Dinger Gi, black god. These are the paramount Anunnaki. The Anunnaki derived from Anu. And in Sumerian, they are Dinger Gi, black god. You have to understand, and I'll close here. You have to understand the ontology of divinity according to the ancient Mesopotamians. According to say that the Anunnaki gods are not black, it screams that we need to study a little deeper. We certainly have to study beyond Zechariah Sitchin. Because, see, when we study the ontology of divinity, according to the ancient Sumerians or ancient Mesopotamians, we learn that these Dinger Gi, the black gods, that the god in Mesopotamia, his flesh was compared to the mesu, the wood of the mesu tree. And the wood of the mesu tree was luminous brown. So the flesh of the god was compared to the wood of the mesu tree, but the skin of the god was compared to the timber, the bark of the Kiskanu tree. The Kiskanu tree is the black sacred tree, a sacred tree that the ancient Mesopotamians spoke of. And the ancient Mesopotamians said that the black bark of the Kiscano tree is similar to the black skin of the gods. The black Kiscano tree is a Salmu image of the gods. Salmu is a Akkadian term that has two meanings. Salmu means both image and it means black. So the Kiskanu tree was the Salmu of the gods, in particular, the god in his skin, because the Kiskano tree is black, and Salmu is black because the gods are black. The other Salmu or image of the gods was the black bull. The Enki was called Amgig Abzu Z, black bull of the Apsu. The bull, the mighty bull, was the paramount animal attribute, animal metaphor for the king of the gods in ancient Mesopotamia. This god, the god Anu and the god Enki, his firstborn, and they were really one and the same god at two levels of manifestation. Anu or An and Enki, Anu Ea, Anu Enki, they're the same god on two levels of manifestation. Their animal symbol, their animal image was the black bull of the Apsu. The black bull was not just black. The black bull was pitch black as asphalt. And it is the hide, the black hide, the black skin of the bull, or black hide of the bull. That was a reference to the black skin of the gods. So somebody asked me, do the Anunnaki really look like this? Now, in fairness, this image of this black god is AI generated. The only thing I can say emphatically, yes, the Anunnaki look like this. I can affirm that the Anunnaki had this pitch black skin because the ancient Mesopotamians went out of their way to depict and make it clear that the skin of the Anunnaki gods was not just black, it was pitch black, like the bark of the Kiscano tree and the hide of the black bull. Now, in here, I have chapters on why is the black gods painted red. Some say, well, the gods weren't black, they were red. No, the black gods were depicted red for a very particular reason. I have a chapter in here entitled, Why Are the Black Gods Blue? The gods are depicted blue. It is not the case, family, that Osiris' skin was literally green. No, it was not. It is not the case, family, that Ra of Egypt literally had blue skin. No, he did not. You have to understand the ontology of divinity according to not just the ancient Mesopotamians, but the ancient black world. And in particular, you got to understand the mathematics of the black god. The blueness of the gods were blue, not because the skin was blue, the skin was black. The gods, black gods, were depicted with gold and red skin, not because their skin was actually gold and red. We detail the mathematics of the black god and explain why the black gods are sometimes depicted blue, why the black gods are sometimes depicted red, why the black gods are sometimes depicted green, and it is not because their skin is actually blue, their skin is actually green, or their skin is actually red. In every case, the skin is black, but it's a different reason that they are depicted blue, red, and green. All of that we document. And so we invite, as I close, we invite you, family, to get the books, study them, and find fault in them. If you mustn't, put it on the table. That's how we advance the conversation. These books are available on my website, wesleymuhammad.com, also drwesleymuhammad.info. Thank you for your patience with your brother. As we worked out the technical difficulties, I pray that all of you have a wonderful evening. I'm going to fall off now and break my fast, inshallah. May Allah, I pray that Allah is pleased with my effort tonight. And assalamu alaikum.